Live. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It's Thursday, August 14th, 2025. Time to start another show, but I can't. There's a roadblock in my way. We're at that stage of the, fascist takeover of Washington, D.C., where we are at random roadblocks being set up by federal law enforcement personnel who have apparently nothing else better to do. Having finished, redacting the Epstein files of Donald Trump's name, and I think I saw somewhere somebody saying that there were over some extraordinary number of documents that had to be cleared of Donald Trump's name. Yeah, not to clear his name, but to clear his name out of the documents associating him with Jeffrey Epstein. I just wanted to say Jeffrey Epstein. And another thing, Jeffrey Epstein. I guess people aren't being distracted by this Jeffrey Epstein, non-Jeffrey Epstein things, I guess, that are happening around Washington, D.C. Roadblock, as I said, set up yesterday, apparently on 14th Street, major thoroughfare for the city, between V and W streets. And I guess this is the neighborhood, I'm told, where Big Balls was allegedly carjacked. And by the way, a lot of people still have a lot of questions about just how exactly that went down. And a number of things surrounding the story are a little bit fishy. And I suppose if they go down the road of trying to give him a presidential medal of freedom for getting carjacked, these questions will come up. So I don't know whether they're going to brave it or not. It's not really worth that much to them, but they might give it a try just to put a show on and to give Trump the chance to hold a medal. And of course, I assume he'll steal one for himself as well. It's a presidential medal. I don't think he should have that much trouble stealing them, but that's one of the things he likes to do, is steal other people's awards. The awards were in the news the other day too. But first, this roadblock, they were literally stopping every car and doing something. I guess checking people's identity papers, because that's not Nazi-ish at all. And trying to figure out who was where and where they were going, but they were also giving out last night the FBI would ticket you if you had a headlight out or you weren't wearing your seatbelt or whatever like that. They were actually justifying their presence there, saying, well, it's a public safety thing too. We're making sure people are buckled up. However, I will point out that weirdo Senator Markwayne Mullin, still can't get over the fact that his name is Markwayne, went on TV the other night. There's a big push on the Republicans have to, subjugate themselves to Donald Trump here and help him carry water. So they're all giving interviews about how afraid of crime in D.C. they are. And in addition to the guy we saw yesterday, is it Burchett? Is that the name? Who cares? Who gave his story about how I live in my office because I'm so scared to go out from all of the crime. Markwayne Mullin says on TV, I drive around D.C. I never wear a seatbelt when I'm driving around, which, maybe he'll bump his head or something. But he doesn't wear a seatbelt, he says, because he's so sure he's going to be carjacked that it's worth the safety risk of not wearing the seatbelt because, I don't know. Because no one knows. Carjacking, of course, the crime of carjacking usually depends on getting you out of the car and getting rid of you and then taking the car. But he says he's afraid to wear a seatbelt because if he's carjacked, he might get stuck trying to get out of the car and escape. And he's afraid for his safety that way. So he's just going to risk his safety driving around without a seatbelt. And meanwhile, the FBI will give you a ticket on 14th Street if you don't have your seatbelt. And I don't know what happens. If the FBI gives you a ticket, I guess you're going to go to Guantanamo while you're awaiting your court date. All right. It's time then to bring in Greg Dworkin, who's standing by with news of his own. In fact, here, how about a little old-timey newsreel music for today? Let me take the edge off of that. Well, now, here's Greg. Good morning, Greg. How are you?
Good morning. It sounds like it's time for my cornflakes.
Yeah, it's ready for something. That rooster. Right. This is him protesting the fact that I ate eggs this morning, I think.
That'll do it. Which came first, the chicken or the egg?
Yeah,
well,
chicken.
First I boiled some eggs, and then I made some chicken, so the egg came first.
Yeah. Well, I didn't get a chance to eat it anyway. So, good morning. What's happening besides
how's the
traffic?
sound? Because I got this little pop-up message from Zoom. You know, if you have voice isolation on and you turn it off, your voice will sound much better. Yes, but Abby will, chime in, and so will the lawn guys and a whole bunch of other stuff.
So if you give it a shot with
no fishbowl today.
Okay, yeah, everything seems fine.
Good. I have the microphone.
I guess it could be better, but
could be better. So since you brought it up, I wasn't going to do this, but now that you brought it up, I'm going to do this, and this is how professionals work out how they're going to do a podcast.
How are we going to do this podcast?
Yeah. So let's do this. First of all, toward the bottom of my list here, I actually stuck in with little sirens a Harry Enton video for you to queue up because we were talking about it, so I thought I'd stick one in. But that's not what we're going to start with. I'm going to start with John Storr from the editorial board. The editorial board.
Yeah, okay. Oh, there's
the Ohio State University. So John Storr says, look, I know it's little, I know it's trivial, but I think it's worth dwelling on a small comment made by a small man who thought it was a good idea to sacrifice his dignity as a man on live TV for the sake of a dictatorial president and his dictatorial ambitions. And we're, of course, talking about Tennessee Congressman Tim Burchett.
That's it. It is Tennessee. I thought it might be, but then I wasn't sure of myself. All right.
Right. He said, quote, "You don't want to go out on the streets at night in Washington, D.C. That's one of the reasons I live in my office at night. It's too dadgum dangerous, brother.
Dadgum.
It's too dangerous, and everybody knows it." Now, Burchett's goal, says John Storr, is to convince us that crime in Washington, D.C. is so bad that Donald Trump is completely justified taking over the duties of the city's police department and in ordering the National Guard, the FBI, and the Secret Service to commandeer the enforcement of law. You were just talking about the roadblocks.
Yeah.
To be believable, we must ignore the fact that Washington, as well as every other major city, is seeing historically low rates of crime.
Yes. Boring.
According to the AP, homicides, robberies, and burglaries are down this year when compared with this time in 2024. Overall, violent crime is down 26% compared with this time a year ago. A recent Department of Justice report, remember this is Trump's Department of Justice, shows that violent crime is down 35% since 2023, homicides is down 32%, carjackings down 53%, speaking of Mark Wayne Mueller, and assaults with a dangerous weapon are down 27%. So when Burchett says everybody knows it's too dangerous to walk the streets at night, clearly not everybody knows.
Right. Meanwhile, Big Balls was happy to do it. But
if asked, however, I'd imagine the congressman would suggest we can't believe what we're told by the D.C. police or by the president's Department of Justice. And yesterday on the show, we mentioned that Stephen Miller is already saying that just like the BLS stuff, all this DOJ stuff is cooked, and we got to fire everybody and replace and do our own numbers.
Yes, they're 100%
have to do the research. So John Storr says, look, after all, if the deep state can conspire with America's enemies, foreign and domestic, to cover up evidence of the secret conspiracies contained in Hunter Biden's laptop, it can conspire to cover up a crime wave so massive that Trump has no choice but to become a dictator.
Well, he didn't want to, but you made him do it.
In asking for our trust, Burchett is tapping into his carefully cultivated image as a man of honor in a city without it. He illustrated that 2 years ago when recalling a time, you may remember this story, David, former Speaker Kevin McCarthy came up from behind Burchett and gave him a kidney shot.
I don't.
Never one to let a sucker punch go unanswered, Burchett gave chase but failed to catch his assailant because McCarthy had a $17 million security detail.
Yeah.
Right? And Burchett was complaining about it. He's the type of guy that when you're a kid would throw a rock over the fence, run home, and hide behind his mama's skirt. Couldn't get to him because he had that security detail. That's Burchett.
See. I didn't realize this was supposed to be a real fight.
Yeah. On the one hand, he wants us to believe he's a man who lives by his own rules, circumstances be damned, and that those rules stand against rich men like McCarthy, who's too chicken to say what he means, who needs other men to defend him. On the other hand, he wants us to believe that normal life in D.C. is so riven with violence, and it's so dangerous, and everybody knows it, that he's justified in never leaving his office, and hopes the president will save him. And I think he understands he can't have it both ways. He can't be a man and take Kevin McCarthy on one-on-one, but complain he's too scared to go outside, so he has to hide behind the president. He can't have it both ways, John Storr says. So
watch him try.
He uses these little words. It's too dadgum dangerous, brother.
Brother.
Please, that's a word men use sometimes in solidarity with other men, especially men so similar in appearance that it justifies using the word brother, which in this case is another white man. So on hearing the word, you might decide to play along for selfish reasons in a game in which one man tells the other man, you're still a real man, even though you're admitting you're too scared to go out of your office at night.
Brother. Yeah.
Brother.
What's his name?
Hulk Hogan.
Yeah, that's it. That's what.
I mean, you hear brother, you know Hulk Hogan. Hulk Hogan is talking to other white guys who take steroids.
Right. Although what Justin Wolfers used it in his joke yesterday. Come at me, brother. I've never heard anybody say it that way.
Right. Okay. Tim Burchett suggests what's really important to him is not manliness, but the appearance of manliness. And in the context in which he's used the word, he suggests what's more important is the price of that appearance, which is to say he's happy to sell off his code of honor in exchange for power. And you might say Burchett didn't hate McCarthy so much as envy him. All this smallness is worth dwelling on because authoritarianism depends on whiny little bitches like Tim Burchett getting together with other whiny little bitches to convince themselves they're big and they're strong when they're actually small and weak, and hope their whiny little bitching grows large enough and loud enough that they won't have to do the hard work. Stephen Miller immediately comes to mind for some reason.
Yes. Right. These are weird, very deeply odd people, and I don't know whether. I mean, I looked at the Burchett video, and I mean, at no point did I say, well, you know, he seems like a man's man, and you know, he's going to do the tough guy thing. No, I don't think so. But I guess that's what they do. Meanwhile, all right, whatever. I don't believe him about never leaving his office, for one thing. And for another, everybody knows. I mean, we've explained this before. These guys live in their offices because they don't want to pay rent for an apartment, and no one
and even when they have apartments, they don't pay rent. He told us that yesterday.
Right, exactly. They just use the place to beat up girlfriends.
Something
like that.
Something.
Anyway, yeah.
Who was that? Corey Mills? Somebody?
Yes, Corey Mills. That was. I don't know what today's Corey Mills scandal is.
What did I say the other day? Some guy named Corey.
Yeah.
Chip. Roy.
You said it was either Roy
mash
or
them all together. It's
Corey, or and maybe the name is Rory Corey. Mark Wayne is now a name, so Rory Corey is another one.
Right.
Maybe. I don't know.
So this is Numbers Muncher on Twitter.
Oh.
The PPI, the price index, goods for manufacturers, comes in way above expectations.
That's good, right?
No, that's bad. That means prices are going up. Monthly was supposed to be 0.2%, and it's now 0.9.
Well, you know,
that's more than 3 times higher than you expect. So that already makes the yearly, which was expected at 2.5, bumps it up to 3.3.
We're not even done.
You want the Fed to cut rates because we're sort of teetering on recession, and they can't because inflation is booming. Because why? Because tariffs.
Yeah. Well, at least it's booming.
So Numbers Muncher, who in a past life was a conservative Republican, but he's a never Trumper.
I see.
When we said tariffs would take a while to start hitting prices and inflation numbers overall, this is what we meant. This is a guy I know from Twitter for like years. He's a good guy.
All right.
Now, this is not Justin Wolfers, but the other economist I like who's good at explaining things, Jason Furman.
Huh. Okay.
And he's writing in the New York Times, the Trump choice that's uniting economists against it.
Oh, I see.
How many commissioners of the Bureau of Labor Statistics can you name? For a vast majority of people, the answer would be 0. That's even true for most economists, he said, and for good reason. While several highly accomplished and effective people have served in the role, it's fundamentally about making sure the plumbing of our data infrastructure is working. Most of us just accept that the data is the best possible estimate of the economy and instead argue about much harder and less objective questions like whether inflation is transitory or job growth is trending toward recession. But that could all change if the Senate confirms President Trump's pick, E.J. Antoni, to be the next BLS commissioner. And by the way, our Australian friend Justin Wolfers points out, Antoni was at January 6th.
Yes. Yeah, he saw that report that I think NBC News found it. I saw Marcy Wheeler happened to find pictures of him. Somehow magically got himself photographed at both entrances that there were break-ins. So he says I was just a bystander, but it's a difficult thing to have made your way around to the other side as opposed to going through once they broke in. He may have been in there as well.
But
yeah,
as I just mentioned, the inflation statistics are coming in way too high. And that's despite the fact that the nonpartisan person was fired, and now there's this Trumper who's sort of circling around possibly. I don't know if he needs to be confirmed or what the deal is there.
No.
But however it is, as of today, Trump's not going to like these numbers. So what do?
Well,
send the FBI?
You could strangle the new guy with his watch
roadblocks.
chain.
We need roadblocks.
Yeah, that'll do it. That's obviously what people are looking for. By the way, yeah, so a lot of protesters out about that at the roadblocks too. No sandwiches thrown last night, I don't think.
No, but they're yelling at the cops.
Yeah, well, good. Why not? Make it uncomfortable.
Because they're not really cops.
They don't have to be there.
They haven't been trained to be cops, and they don't know what they're doing, but that's okay.
So the new guy who's supposed to come in and do fake numbers, I saw his photo with Trump circulating the other day. He's a very, another oddball. So he's there. He's wearing a goatee, as many of them do, but I don't know.
Well, we went over his CV yesterday.
Yeah. Well, I guess there was nothing going on in the CV, right? So he didn't have to spend any time typing. So he spent the time at a thrift store, I guess, buying. He's wearing a 3-piece suit with a pocket square, but a watch chain, like an old timey watch chain. I like this guy. He looks to me like, all right, well, voted in a high school yearbook as most likely to buy a sword cane or some dumb thing like this.
What a great idea!
It's just
have one of those.
A weirdo that just
like every house should have one.
Yeah, right. Of course, and he's a real. He gives you the. The vibes of a guy who spent the 2010s out at the bar with a fedora calling women milady. Right. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Maybe that's Tim Burchett, a real man.
Yeah.
So what do I use my sword cane for? Fighting with my Murphy bed. Well,
Right. And or possibly breaking into the Capitol on both sides.
You never know.
He says he was just wandering by the way. He said he saw it on the news and said, something is afoot.
Did you... Yeah, the game is afoot.
Yeah.
Did I send you that like Harry Enton clip?
Yes, Harry Enton. Yeah, although that's funny. I freeze the frame. It's on a video glitch. So
we'll play a little bit of it.
I don't know. It's got 247 here, but does he go crazy? What's happening here?
No, just at the beginning at least.
Let me just say this is an abject disaster. Abject disaster for the President of the United States. You mentioned it, Jessica. Look, voters on Trump and inflation. He won the 2024 election because he was more entrusted on inflation than Kamala Harris was, led by a margin of 9 points. Look at where his net approval stands today, though, on inflation. My goodness gracious. Into the gutter we go. Underwater we go. He's 25 points underwater. My goodness gracious.
Where is it?
Harry like gets real excited about numbers.
Yeah, I guess so. The volume seems a little low, but anyway, lots of excitement with my goodness gracious underwater that came through.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Is there? I'll just keep rolling, or is there? Or we just want to talk about how excited
you get the gist here, because everything
is
where
the Little Mermaid is. Extreme. He is matching the Little Mermaid. That's how far underwater he is.
Okay, you can stop there. It doesn't get any better than that.
I didn't realize that was looming out there. The Little Mermaid. Okay. Yeah. That's funny. You know what? Nothing would irritate Trump more than to start calling him the Little Mermaid somehow. I don't know why.
Because he's so far underwater, he can hear calypso music.
Okay. Although, Harry Enton got everybody's attention earlier this week saying that, Epstein is a nothing burger. Forget about it. It's not even hurting him. He's saying that
because
his underwater is on
because Republicans have the same approval as they always did.
Yeah.
Well, that's not the point. It's never the point. There are people who don't call themselves Republican who support Trump who are very upset with what's going on, and prices are far more important than the Epstein story in regard to that. And that's why those numbers that came in today are just really, really key.
Yeah. I wonder what. Okay. So somebody else will probably get fired now that bad numbers came out. He didn't put his sword cane guy in yet. Yeah. So it's all fake.
So Jason Furman writes.
Right.
Dr. Antoni's selection has done something I've rarely seen, which is to unite a number of economists and policy wonks from across the political spectrum. The American Enterprise Institute's Stan Vogert told Washington Post he's utterly unqualified and as partisan as it gets. Similar sentiments were echoed by people affiliated with conservative and libertarian think tanks in a Wall Street Journal editorial and a National Review article. Well, the reason people are so worried is that the BLS produces the two most important economic reports every month, Employment Report and Consumer Price Index, both of which are central to decision-making by the Fed, the Federal Reserve, that is, financial markets, and businesses more broadly. The Employment Report has suffered from fewer businesses answering the survey questions. Both reports have suffered from deep budget cuts as the BLS and are likely to suffer more now. Despite these challenges, revisions to the job numbers have not gotten markedly worse in recent years. If anything, they've gotten better. But again, as our other favorite economist, Justin Wolfers, points out, you can have accuracy, you can have timeliness, you can have cheap, but you can't have all three.
Yeah.
And so if you stop paying for it, you're going to take a long time to get accurate numbers, if at all. Now, these numbers are bad, so Trump doesn't want to see them. In the past, he writes, conspiracy theories about the government cooking the books are made by isolated people and didn't gain serious traction. But now that Mr. Trump is threatening to destroy trust in the data, he's threatening the water we drink without thinking about it, and an even more post-truth world will be bad for all of us, and that's true.
Yeah. He seized control of a little-known entity here, but as you point out, like when you bring up the consumer price index, right? Everything depends on that. Not only does the Fed decide what to do with the lending rates in order to account for inflation or to tinker with the margins of the economy, macro economy, to try to keep things humming the best they can.
Now,
but all your benefits are linked to
the
CPI.
Consumer Price Index is what people pay for stuff.
Yes.
What came out this morning is the Producer Price Index, obviously related.
PPI, not CPI.
Which measures the average change over time in the selling prices. So first the price goes up, then what you pay for it goes up in that order. So this is coming. I mean,
I like to pay before
the manufacturers are telling you they're sick and tired of eating the cost of what Trump is doing. It's your turn now.
Yes. I mean, obviously, I guess the whole point of it. Yeah, I didn't get that right. That it was PPI rather than CPI. But next week it'll have to be CPI.
I'm trying to save you from these people writing in and say, but you didn't say CPI.
They're not even going to do it. But I'll say, you know what? His microphone was screwy, and I couldn't tell whether it was C or P. That's the
exactly.
But the CPI will follow. I mean, it has to. If the PPI goes up, the producers raise their prices. The people who consume it will pay those. I have to either pay those
talk
prices
to your son. He knows the
or
stuff.
deprive themselves. And I mean, we could do either one, but that doesn't change the prices. So I don't know how long it takes for them to come out with. It was like every 2 weeks, CPI first, and then or PPI then CPI. I don't know, but I assume they have to go hand in hand, because what would be the point? Although, why do both? I don't know. But okay, it's 2 charts is always better than 1.
Yeah. Anyway, so just thought I'd mention that. So,
yeah.
Why? You what's a distraction and what's not a distraction? A constant argument. It doesn't really matter. Everything is important. And the whole idea that Trump is trying to screw things up so that he could be dictator, whether it's in the roadblock streets of Washington, D.C., where Tim Burchett is too scared to come out of his office, or whether we're talking about, how you change the numbers in BLS to make Trump look better than he is. And by the way, you go about firing everybody who doesn't agree with him, which is what the administration has done. And no, this is not acceptable, and it should not be normal. And you don't normalize it by saying, oh, well, that was last week's story. No, it's still a big story, and this is all part of it.
Yep. These guys who will be manipulating the statistics for him will be. It's much more than, like I was saying, with the CPI anyway. Much more than just changing his talking points. You will find that if you like Social Security recipients, Medicare and Medicaid recipients, each year over year as they budget for those programs and try and figure out how what kind of benefits people will be getting, they're all linked
cost of living
to
increases,
CPI.
forget it. There is no cost of living increase because inflation is going down, not up. And who are you to challenge me?
So while the prices go up, you'll be able to afford less anyway. But on top of that, you'll take a double hit when they say prices aren't going up. You're getting less.
But that's
than
how
we
we're
gave
talking
you last
about
year.
making America great again, which, by the way, maybe we'll talk about this a little bit in the second part of my 15-minute segment.
Yeah.
But the thing that Trump is very good at is conveying simple concepts to simple people. Make America great again is a phrase you can understand. You may hate it, you may think it's stupid, but you absolutely understand what he's saying. You talk policy with policy wonks about the Fed and CPI. I don't even know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Whatever Trump is doing, I know, say his voters, he's trying to make America great again. I understand that. What are you doing?
Sure. I guess I could just I'd make it simple by saying hiring this guy is a secret Social Security cut.
Right. Well, why am I saying this? Jamel Bowie has a wonderful piece today. Okay. Why Trump always wants a crisis.
Sure.
I mean, you're talking the capital city and all that stuff. Tim Burchett, none of it's true, Jamel Bowie writes. Well, the Justice Department itself announced in January crime in the Capitol is the lowest it's been in over 30 years. But his claims are less reason than pretext. Trump is simply enthralled by the image of a crackdown, so basically he wants to do it. Yeah. And so he recalls the Insurrection Act during the protests of the summer of 2020. He asked the Secretary of Defense, Mark Esper, if soldiers could shoot protesters in the legs or something. Yeah. This is what he wants. Yeah. And so let's not forget that. And so the guy who was at January 6th in charge of BLS numbers now, all part and parcel of the same thing. We'll talk about it more after the break. Yeah.
Meanwhile, he's like the 25th guy to get appointed to this government who was at January 6th. So, and of course the president actually, led it. So what are you going to do? It's a day of love. Hi, everybody. It's me, David Waldman. Yes, the same guy who interrupts you all the time. Interrupting you one more time just to tell you again, another reminder that your contributions are what keep this show on the air, and Patreon.com, Patreon.com, is still among the easiest ways to make the sustaining subscription donations that keep us afloat. Are you ready for the pep talk about how our Patreon campaign is still going strong and growing? Well, too bad. Yeah, the plain fact is we actually are headed in the wrong direction, and whereas we once had about 175 monthly patrons, we're now actually down below 150. Time to recruit some more. Not exactly the kind of news I wanted to share, but there it is. For those of you in a position to support the show, Patreon.com does make it easy to make those secure, recurring monthly contributions to do so. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. We've been through a lot together. The worst of the pandemic, we hope. The worst of the insurrection, we hope. So go ahead and treat yourself. You don't need an excuse. Give yourself the gift of a little something you enjoy in life. Support the show. And of course, if you happen to prefer using PayPal or even the Square Cash app, we're up and running on those options too. So thanks again, everyone, for all your support. We couldn't, or at least shouldn't, do it without you. Hope you'll be on board soon too. Thanks for all your support. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. We got another 15 minutes of, maybe there's some news, maybe not, that we're going to stretch into 30. Greg Dworkin, what's next?
So let's talk about a little bit more about that Jamel Bowie piece. He says in his 1948 book, Constitutional Dictatorship, Crisis Government in the Modern Democracy, the political scientist Clinton Rossiter observed that while Constitution lacks a formal switch for emergency governance, Congress has throughout the nation's history permanently vested the president with, quote, vast discretionary powers to be exercised in time of war or other national emergency, usually to be determined and proclaimed by himself.
Yes, we give him that.
He said this in 1948. This accretion of emergency power continued well past the post-war period and into the present.
Yes. Yeah.
A steady concentration of power in the person of the president. You could even argue, as Gary Wills did in Bomb Power, the Modern Presidency and National Security State, atomic weaponry and the Cold War produced a permanent emergency that's made the abnormal normal and constitutional diminishment the settled order. And by this view, Trump represents a difference in degree, an extreme one, and not a difference of kind. So to the extent there's a limiting force on the use of emergency or crisis power, it's a president's commitment to the constitutional system itself. Remember Richard Nixon? It's not illegal if the president does it.
Right. And
he was reviled for that, but John Roberts said, no, he was probably right.
Yeah, and Trump, of course, has said, oh, absolutely. The whole point of my presidency is to prove that the last 50 years have been wrong.
Right.
Okay.
Now, to the extent, Jamel Bory writes, there's a limiting force on the use of emergency or crisis power, it's a president's commitment to the constitutional system itself. Lincoln claimed vast new powers, and he justified it as necessary evils to save the Union and preserve American liberty. In the face of insurrection, he wrote to Congress in 1862, it became necessary for me to choose whether using only the existing means, agencies, and processes which Congress had provided, I should let the government fall at once into ruin, or whether, availing myself of the broader powers, I would make an effort to save it with all its blessings to the present age and for posterity.
Oops.
So we've gambled on the discretion of men to keep the use of crisis authority in check, and beyond the psychological impulse, there's a practical reason Trump's embraced emergency powers. He can't do anything else. Look past his boastful claims of deal-making, and you'll see a president who struggles to hold his own in negotiations of equals, and too acutely solipsistic, I got that pronunciation, to persuade a skeptic of his own view. Even his much vaunted trade deals and agreements, at least by subordinates and admirers, with institutions of higher education are less exchanges in a form of extortion. Every occupant of the Oval Office is tempted by the immense powers. A president with neither the disposition nor the ability to do the work is bound to abuse them, and that's basically where he is. Okay. Now, you step back and look at this argument and say he's absolutely right.
Yeah,
but
that seems right.
Compare that argument, detailed and nuanced, with Make America Great Again. Which one's easier to understand?
Right. I mean, that's one of the old jokes. I don't know, is it the Onion old jokes, or was it the Daily Show thing? You know, this sort of intelligent, well-presented argument, and the answer to that is, nuh-uh.
Right.
Wrong.
So, that's where we stand. And Ben Rhodes actually wrote about this.
Okay.
And says, and I alluded to this the other day. It turns out he wrote a whole article about it, which I didn't know.
Oh.
How short-term thinking is destroying America.
Oh.
In the chaos depicted, Trump is both off-screen and omnipresent. Over the decade he's dominated our politics, he's been both a cause and symptom of the unraveling of our society. Today, his takeover appears complete, as Eddington excruciatingly reminds us. The comparatively moderate first Trump administration ended in a catastrophically mismanaged pandemic, mass protests, and violent insurrection. The fact that he returned to power even after that seemed to confirm his instinct that America has become an enterprise with a limitless margin for error, a place where individuals, like superpowers, can avoid consequences of their actions. Many people thought it was impossible for me to stage such a historic political comeback, but here I am. The implicit message? When we look at Trump, we see ourselves. Unsurprisingly, the second Trump administration has binged on short-term wins at the expense of the future. Everything from changing the CPI, PPI, PCI numbers, everything that you could possibly change to make Trump look better today, who cares about tomorrow? He's into. And again, Ben Rhodes goes into the fact that short-termism is building over years. But in the short term, Democrats have to mobilize to ensure that we still have a democratic foundation to build on, but the animating purpose should be to imagine and build what comes after. This isn't about skipping ahead to the fine points. It's about a coherent vision. For example, even when presented with Zoran Mamdani's campaign in New York, an innovative example of fresh political tactics and policies, many party leaders recoiled. The party seems quite literally to be afraid of its own future. It's past time for Democrats to do what Mamdani did in his campaign, get out in communities, don't live in fear of bad faith attacks, don't stay in your office because you're afraid to walk the streets at night.
Right.
I added that. Mine cities and state legislators for new ideas, enlist civil society, enlist faith groups, beleaguered universities and industry in envisioning an alternative future. Abandon campaign financing that makes you beholden to donors who make you hypocrites.
Well,
Make a concerted effort to facilitate generational change so the faces of the party are younger, different, and more diverse. Don't go with the past, go with the future.
Okay.
He uses Mamdani as a great example. I use Mamdani as a great example. Doesn't mean I agree with everything he stands for, but the way he's campaigning and what he represents is, as a different politician might say, huge.
Yes,
Y-U-G-E, huge.
If you need to justify it, well, it doesn't mean I agree with everything, but you could say, like Chuck Todd, it's so crazy it just might work.
Yeah, imagine.
You could always fall back on that. That'll get you famous.
Now, this is an interesting piece here by G. Elliott Martz, who's gotten a lot of pushback from pollsters on it. Oh. He writes, moderation is not a silver bullet. In 2024, moderate candidates for the U.S. House barely outperformed the average partisan. Remember, we were talking about win over replacement and war and warp and that stuff.
Yeah.
And when he looks at the numbers he developed, the model suggests that ideological moderates don't substantially outperform the party's average member. Cherry-picking representatives that you identify as moderate dramatically overstates the electoral benefit of actual empirical moderation. Sometimes it works, he's saying, sometimes it doesn't. But part of the deal is you can't look at people in extreme districts like most of Connecticut. My district, you got to be a moderate to win.
Okay.
Right? But in John Larson's district, you don't.
All right.
Joe Courtney has to be a moderate on the other side of the state with their heavily defense industry, constituency.
Yeah.
Which is different than what we have to do on this part of the state. So if you're looking to see whether a moderate can win, look at Courtney's area, and the answer is yeah, he does great. He does much better. He's one of the higher overperformers on the entire list of congressmen.
Surprisingly enough.
But if you're looking in a district that Rosa DeLauro happens to represent, very liberal congresswoman.
That's true.
It doesn't make any difference who it is.
Oh.
So if you're saying moderation doesn't mean anything, well, you're talking about DeLauro. But if you say moderation does mean something, then you're talking about Larson. Both can be true. It just depends upon where you are.
I guess so. Is there some geographical tie to politics that we might take away as a lesson, that all politics is like, say, I don't know, regional or something like that?
Local, dare I say.
Local. All right. Yeah, that'll work. I wonder whether the guy who said that knew anything about electoral politics. I guess so.
I wonder.
Yeah.
So, this last piece that I have, I can't really stretch it for another 30 minutes, only for another 5.
I'll help you do that.
There's a really interesting piece.
Yeah.
In Politico, and the reasons it's interesting is because Politico is a Republican-leaning rag.
Yeah, I guess so. Sure.
I mean, it's not super conservative crazy like National Review, but it definitely is Republican-leaning, just like Axios is.
Yeah, they'll frame things in ways subtly sometimes, and other times not so subtly, that make you say, wait a second. But
their Republican sources are pretty good, so I tend to believe them when I read stuff about what Republicans are thinking, and I tend to disbelieve them when I read about what Democrats are thinking.
I think that's a fair assessment.
So this story says, a strange GOP divide is forming over Trump's gerrymandering plans. Republicans are keenly aware that Trump has been fixated for months on keeping his House majority in the upcoming midterms. Resistance to mid-decade redraws is running the ideological gamut and cutting across levels of government. Many are backing Trump's gambit to protect the House GOP majority, but a growing number of Republican lawmakers are airing concerns, a list that spans lawmakers from swing districts in blue states to safe territory in Florida. Trump and his team have convinced Texas Republicans to draw a new House map, but the Republican governor of New Hampshire has ruled out any changes because, quote, the timing is off, end quote.
The timing is off. I guess they're not in session.
You have to do it on, the 20s and 30s and 40s because you get the census data to do it. And GOP, by the way, Trump wants to change how we do the census.
Oh, why not? In fact, why not just let the steampunk goatee guy declare what the population is in the states that he likes?
Right.
Okay.
By the way, I came across, speaking of BLS, I don't have it in front of me, but I came across this really interesting and very esoteric discussion about BLS numbers.
Oh, we like that.
Conservatives are saying what Trump is doing is working because it may seem like the foreign people we're kicking out, the immigrants and undocumented and such, are no longer working. Therefore, you would expect employment unemployment to
increase,
change because of what they're doing. Because what's really happening is that unemployment's not going up because native-born people are just working even more, and that's what we want.
Is it? I don't know. It's odd.
It's not what I want. But,
yeah, right.
I mean, that's what they want. The interesting thing is none of that's true.
Oh, well,
and the reason is that when BLS looks at numbers, they have fixed figures based on the census. They don't really change all that often. So, in other words, the total number of people in the United States is exact right down to the single digit.
Well, so
every year until they change those numbers.
Yeah,
and everything else is based on that. So the percentage of people who are native-born, the percentage of people who are foreign-born does not change. The employment number goes up and down, but the percentage of who is who, when you break out demographics, doesn't change because that number is fixed.
Well, they stop.
You can predict next year how many people are in the United States. It's the exact same number as this year.
Yeah. I mean,
so when your numbers don't change, you can play with those numbers and make it anything you want, but it's not reality. It doesn't reflect what's actually going on. This is one of those Jason Furman, well, you can have it, quick and cheap, or you can have it accurate, but you can't have like all those things.
Yeah. I like that explainer.
So you make it an estimate. So the estimate based on our previous numbers, it's like, what's going on with the economy? Well, our latest statistics are from 4 years ago. And at that time, this is how many people were working. Well, that's accurate, but not helpful.
Not timely.
Not timely.
See? There you go. But, I mean, how else are you going to do it? You can't, well, the economy, how's the economy doing? Well, hold on a second. This just in, someone just bought something. Oh, wait, another person just bought something. You can't have perfect data.
Right.
That's the other one.
So these strange divisions, says Politico, underscore the complex political dynamics of the president's power play. It's become a loyalty test that could boost Republicans' chances of keeping the trifecta in Washington, but also carry significant electoral risk for several of their own members in Congress. Remember, when you try to stretch your Republican majority to cover every district, you make the majority in each individual district perhaps a little bit less than it was. So you take the risk that in a wave, Democrats overwhelm the Republican advantage that they gave themselves. Because instead of winning 4 districts by 20, now you're winning 6 districts by 11. And, a plus 12, you lose everything.
Yes. Well, I'm looking forward to that possibility.
And the White House says, of course, none of that matters. We're doing it, and everybody backs us.
Yes.
Now, here's an example of when I say Politico is Republican leaning. This next story, also in Politico, has the same subject, different look.
Redistricting. Okay.
California voters back independent congressional maps, complicating Gavin Newsom's redistricting push.
Yeah.
Newsom faces a major hurdle in his quest to revamp the state's congressional lines. According to a new poll we commissioned, Californians' deep support for current independent redistricting commission, nearly 2-1.
Yeah.
Just 36% of respondents back returning congressional redistricting authority to state lawmakers. However, this article doesn't say it, but a lot of the pollsters who saw this online saying, so what? You didn't tell your folks, you didn't do the A-B comparison that you often do in other polls.
No, they didn't.
Do you approve redistricting? Would you approve of redistricting if you knew that Republicans are trying to take advantage of it all over the rest of the country? 2 different answers.
Yeah.
This one only looks at the first, doesn't apply the second in any way. You have to assume that the people responding to the polls know what's going on in Texas. Come on.
Yeah, well, that's not likely. And
that's
of course,
not likely, and therefore what this number means doesn't mean anything. Gavin Newsom, as governor, could simply go on TV and saying, hey, folks, this is why we're doing this. And do you think support would go up? I certainly do.
Yes, I would imagine so. Right. And if you're asking the question, do you support partisan redistricting, or do you like the lovely, fair, independent commission that we use and that you adopted by referendum here in California? All things being equal, I would prefer that things be done on a nonpartisan basis, but they're not equal. That's the problem.
Okay. I got a video for you.
Uh-oh.
I'm putting it at the list, and I need you to play it.
Okay, and I need to find it in order to do that. So
it's on YouTube. It's from the old BBC show Yes Minister.
Oh dear.
It is so good.
Down at the bottom. Here we go. All right, let's see. We'll see what happens, whether there's an ad attached to it or not. We'll keep it muted for a second. Oh yeah, first we got to find out about Limu Emu here, and Doug. So hold on a second till the skip button comes up. Here we go, and then we can pause and turn on the sound and ready to go. Okay, so from Yes Minister. Oh, it's
now before you play it.
Yeah, it's starting in the middle for some reason.
The setup here.
Yeah.
Is that the very experienced civil servant who's extremely good at thwarting anything that the political minister wants to do is explaining how polling works to the youthful secretary who's an idealist and is just trying to figure out how things work.
I see. Now, it's set to start at about 2 minutes into this 3.5 minute clip. I don't know if this is the part that we need. Is that what you tell me? Here we are. Okay, this is where it wants to begin.
There you are, you see, Bernard. The perfect balanced sample. So, we just commissioned our own survey for the Ministry of Defence. See to it, Bernard.
Yes, but what about the broadcast?
When's he expecting to do it?
I don't know, sometime next month, I suppose.
Well, perhaps you'll tell him it'll be in 11 days' time.
11 days? That's a bit soon. Suppose he refuses.
Well, then you can tell him that we've just learned from the Joint Broadcasting Committee that the opposition will be holding a party political in 18 days' time, and he's entitled to get his ministerial in first. Of course, if he wishes the first political broadcast of his premiership to be given by the opposition, that's fine.
Is that true?
It will be. If you don't mention it till tomorrow.
But he could still announce his new policy.
No, I don't think so, Bernard. He'll have only one meeting with his cabinet colleagues in the Overseas Policy and Defence Committee to clear it.
I understand all his cabinet colleagues are in favour of it.
Yes, but only personally, Bernard, only politically. But are they in favour officially, as responsible departmental ministers?
Oh, I see. I suppose that will depend on the advice they get, will it?
They're the advisors.
I see. Okay. Well, yes, all right. Was that the part we needed here? I don't know why I wanted to start there.
No, we haven't gotten to the part we needed.
Oh.
Wait, is it over?
Yeah, I think probably at the beginning maybe was the part we wanted to hear. But I'm entertained.
Okay, well then, let me give you the one that actually covers what I wanted to show. That was fun, though.
Yeah, we all enjoyed it. Oh, is there another one that you want? Okay. All right.
Also at the bottom.
All right, hold on a second. Switching over to Zoom and down to the... All right, here we go. We'll try this one again, although it was quite funny and entertaining. Let's see. Maybe an ad in this one, too. No. Okay, here we go. Oh, he's smiling in just the same way. Let's try this.
He's going to say something new and radical in the broadcast.
What, that silly grand design? Bernard, that was precisely what you had to avoid. How did this come about? I shall need a very good explanation.
Well, he's very keen on it.
What's that got to do with it? Things don't happen just because prime ministers are very keen on them. Neville Chamberlain was very keen on peace.
Yes, he thinks it's a vote winner.
Ah, that's more serious. Sit down. What makes him think that?
Well, the party have had an opinion poll done. It seems all the voters are in favour of bringing back national service.
Well, have another opinion poll done showing the voters are against bringing back national service.
Well, we can't be for it and against.
Of course they can, Bernard. Have you ever been surveyed?
Yes. Well, not me, actually. My house. Oh, I see what you mean.
Well, Bernard, you know what happens. A nice young lady comes up to you. Obviously, you want to create a good impression. You don't want to look a fool, do you? No, so she starts asking you some questions. Mr. Woolley, are you worried about the number of young people without jobs?
Yes.
Are you worried about the rise in crime among teenagers?
Yes.
Do you think there's a lack of discipline in our comprehensive schools?
Yes.
Do you think young people welcome some authority and leadership in their lives?
Yes.
Do you think they respond to a challenge?
Yes.
Would you be in favor of reintroducing national service?
Oh, well, I suppose I might.
Yes or no?
Yes.
Of course you would, Bernard. After all you've told you can't say no to that. So, they don't mention the first 5 questions and they publish the last one.
Is that really what they do?
Well, not the reputable ones, no, but there aren't many of those. So, alternatively, the young lady can get the opposite result.
How?
Mr. Woolley, are you worried about the danger of war?
Yes.
Are you worried about the growth of armaments?
Yes.
Do you think there's a danger in giving young people guns and teaching them how to kill?
Yes.
Do you think it's wrong to force people to take up arms against their will?
Yes.
Would you oppose the reintroduction of national service?
Yes.
There you are, you see, Bernard. The perfect balanced sample.
That's where the other one.
That's what we picked up. Okay.
This one came first, and then you heard the other one.
All right. Well, we're in copyright trouble now, but no problem. We'll just
BBC,
take it
I
down
think
at
you're
the end.
okay.
All right. Blimey. I hope so.
Yeah, but the point is, this political poll shows something. Well, how was it worded? Did they actually introduce information about what the opposition is from or any of that? No. Well, then what does it mean? I don't know. Probably nothing.
That is interesting. By the way, one of the recommended videos that the algorithm is trying to feed me next is somebody who has titled their piece, "I gaslit far-right Twitter into being woke." So I think that's actually
I think we'll skip that one.
But that's a good call off of this thing.
Good. I'm glad you did. Go out and have a good day. Let's keep talking about what we're talking about.
Yeah. Oh no, I'm not going to watch this thing. Are you kidding? I just think it's a funny algorithmic suggestion. Yeah. Oh, that's a good idea. Manipulating people's survey responses. I think I'll go do that. Okay. Well, I hope it worked. I hope they stayed woke. But anyway, all right.
Oh, listen.
That was wild.
This is from February 25th, 2024.
Okay.
And I don't even know who's writing it here, but it's called The Week in Polls in 2024. Welcome to the 96th edition. But the most famous TV show, did they get it right about opinion polls? And, of course, they referenced this.
I see.
38 years ago, the BBC aired probably the most famous TV or film scene about opinion polls in the second episode of Yes, Prime Minister, in which Jim Hacker, the newly installed PM, having dealt with nuclear deterrence in the first episode, moved on to worrying about public opinion, and Humphrey Appleby, the secretary, explains to his more junior colleague, Bernard Woolley, how the ordering and wording of polling questions can be varied to get the answer you want. And, in polling world, it's just like really famous.
Yeah.
In fact, this is a 1 year ago piece on Reddit.
Polling.
Ipsos actually did the Yes, Prime Minister National Service question.
Yeah.
So this is a really famous episode, and it's my fault that I've never brought it up before. But boy, this should be the foundation of every discussion on polling.
Yeah, you've certainly. I mean, we've discussed the concept, and you've discussed Yes, Prime Minister before too. And I guess I should go watch the whole thing anyway. But
start with Yes, Minister. That's
Yes,
the
Minister,
first series, and then this hack named Hacker. Winds up being elected prime minister because there's nobody else, which is important to the civil servants who back him because their careers depend on his careers, and that's why they keep him out of trouble and try to maneuver him into doing what's best in their view. And it's a fascinating look at power structures, and it is so reminiscent of what actually happens in Washington, much more so than these wannabe shows about power. The VP, the Veep, and all that stuff. This is just so much better. And in addition to that, explains why Eleanor Holmes and Dianne Feinstein and other Congress people who perhaps shouldn't be there anymore are still there. It's because their people want to be there.
Yeah, right. That's sort of a long-standing theme in. It predates democratic politics, certainly. Yeah,
sure. This is a 30-year-old show, and it's wonderful, and it covers all of that.
Okay, right? This is the guy that employs you and allows you to pull the levers that make things happen. It doesn't really matter whether he never understood it when he was young. Who cares that he's senile now? He doesn't understand it
now. What's the difference, right?
Yeah. Well, that's true, and also just the difficulty politically of imagining a successor to someone who's just kind of always been the person, the name.
Or we can have Zohran Mamdani.
Right. I mean,
that would be a change. It's different than what we're used to. We have this
yes.
whole setup for like what we do now.
Right.
Why don't
well,
people
you got
like
to, you know, he is a bit of a unicorn in the charismatic sense, right? You know, a lot of times the people who have that kind of magnetic personality and leadership ability go and cash in
How did
elsewhere.
that work out politically?
Oh, well.
Oh, well, you have Doug Shane and Pat Goodell writing, well, he should step down after his first term for the good of the country.
Right. Yeah. So it doesn't work all the time, but it's difficult to find a successor.
Well, it didn't work out for Goodell and Shane. They're the people.
Well, I don't know. They're still
who
there.
want the old structure because we know how to work within that structure.
Yeah. That's true. Well, you know, it's not easy to find people who are who as unknowns introduce themselves to the electorate and people say, I could see that guy taking the job. We do this every couple of years when there's an open seat presidential contest and we have 19 people running in each party and we have to have 5 different debates, and none of them, we're all saying none of them have the experience necessary to become, because nobody does, because it's a unique job. But
right.
And also
but sometimes they absolutely convince you that that's true, like Rick Perry, for example.
Yeah. Right. Well, that's true. And there are definitely
3 reasons why he shouldn't be president. I only remember 2, but, you know, absolutely you've convinced me.
Meanwhile, like, you know, Donald Trump, what are your 3 reasons? I can only remember 1, and I'm not even certain I can do that. You win, you're the president. Now, you can't tell me Rick Perry can't get elected after electing Donald Trump, but it requires a certain something, and in Trump's case, it's the ability to convince yourself that it's okay to go out and lie like a maniac.
Again, you know, I've made this point from the time Trump became on the stage. This goes back to his New York City realtor days.
Mm-hmm.
When you have no shame,
yes,
you can do anything. It's a superpower. Other people do have shame, and they just can't do what you do.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine coming up with some of the lies that he comes up with. You're bound by all sorts of things, traditions.
A sociopath in order to do that. You have to be a narcissistic sociopath to be able to do what Trump does. And most people he runs against don't have that.
Yeah.
And so he has an advantage, and he takes advantage of that.
Yeah, you know, you're afraid of being wrong about something or having somebody check you and say, that's not what's happening. Here's the statistics. Well, all the statistics are fake. That's all it takes, really. All right. Well, pretty amazing. It is Thursday. This means the end of the active week for you, Greg. We'll come back after Trump surrenders to Putin in Alaska, which happens, I guess,
thanks for
tomorrow.
Being flexible on those videos. They're pretty good.
Certainly. Yes, I hope YouTube is. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. I figured out how to make this podcast more popular. We'll just simply play entire episodes of the world's most favorite and most popular television shows, although without the video. That does somewhat diminish it, but then presumably we'll be able to rake it in at that point. All right, well, BBC, don't get upset. Although very often what happens on YouTube is it isn't even the actual copyright owner who gets upset. It's somebody else squatting on and claiming copyright and just trying to use it to leverage people. But all right, well, hopefully we get away with that one. And if it's not distributed worldwide as a result, well, golly, I guess we'll be okay. You should be listening on Patreon anyway. And all of you. Of course, once again, I should remind everybody you should be moving over to Patreon to support us with monthly recurring donations. Patreon, patreon.com/KagroX, because that's the wacky name we use here for the Kagro, minus the X, in the morning show. And if we're worth your time daily, well, I don't know. You should be contributing to the show. As I've made the pitch before, right? If it's worth, let's say 99 cents or maybe even $1 for you to sit back and listen to the show each day, if we're that important to you, that you download past episodes in order to catch up, for instance, as many people do. If it's worth going out of your way to do that, surely this is a $1 in the kitty each day sort of thing. We have that up on our patreon.com membership tiers as the $25 a month tier. And it sounds like a lot, But at $1 a time, I wish we could break it down that way. And one of these days, someone will come up with a real and helpful and workable micro-payment system that will make it that much easier. And you'll probably be paying me in Bitcoin at that point, too. And who knows? And we'll have flying cars. All the things we've been looking forward to. All right, let's see. Speaking of thanks to people, by the way, I wanted to call out Seth Chipman, longtime listener and supporter of the show, who taking to heart, very literally, our suggestion that there are other things over and above financial contributions, or instead of, if you really just can't make it work, that you could be doing to help, I don't know, I guess I'm saying use the algorithms, trick people into coming into the show and becoming addicted to it and then end up subscribing for $25 a month. But Seth has been very actively commenting on the posts as they go up and the shows as they go up. And, I don't know if we'll ever be able to quite as easily foster conversation there as they might have envisioned when they designed the system. But maybe one day, and maybe one day we can explore some of those options and have the chats going on in the middle of the show, although I'd need like 17 more computer screens in order to make that work. But thank you, Seth, for making the effort, and I think it does. Also, let's see, Phil Biederbeck, who has been commenting of late on all of the shows as well, both of you chiming in, and then a couple of folks joining them. Mary Hill liking our posts left and right. Martha Johnston is a bit of a constant there as well with the algorithmic boosts, and more names sort of joining the ranks of those doing what they can to costlessly, I might add, boost the ratings inside of Patreon. And I guess this is supposed to help, others who are poking around and who ask Patreon, hey, tell me, I like these political podcasts. Tell me what else is out there. The chances are that much greater that will be recommended to them. And I don't know what happens when they actually listen to the show, but we hope that some of them become converted to the show. By the way, somewhere in my in the inbox here, I got to look for my, I starred it so that I could find it later on. Yes, right. One of our longtime supporters who realized as we were mentioning to everybody, oh, yes, sometimes people have not gotten notice that they were subscribers to the show and now something has gone wrong. Very often it is a change in you're issued a new number for your credit card when, as is the case here, maybe your credit card number is part of a batch that were stolen by hackers, and in an abundance of caution, or if you need to, and you call them or and let them know that there were charges or you're worried about things, or sometimes, though, automatically, if your card was in a batch that was compromised, they'll reissue you a new card, tell you everything is fine, and sometimes it actually is fine. But use this new number instead, and then all of your online subscriptions, sometimes you get notice about them expiring, sometimes you don't. And that in my review of the category of users who have had that happen to them, that Patreon has been notified that the card is no longer active for whatever reason, they are not particularly good, it seems, about notifying people, hey, you had these subscriptions and now they've been canceled and you should do something about them if you want them to continue. And here's the thing. When you sign up on Patreon and you're a subscriber, when new shows go up each day, you get a convenient little email that tells you a new one is coming. Now, after a while, I'm sure you're kind of used to the fact that, okay, I know it's coming, and you don't probably open every single email and excitedly go and immediately download, but you nod knowingly that that's happening, and you probably fall out of the habit of actually opening or dealing with that email in any way. It's just one of those, it becomes routine background noise, which, unfortunately that's the way it is. It's okay. You don't have to pay attention to every email that says, hey, there's a new show. When you're interested in hearing the show, you'll go. That too has become a matter of habit, and we're glad for that. But what was pointed out to me here is that sometimes you might not notice as a result when those emails stop. You just figure, there's been a change in policy or something, or a change in operations over at Patreon, and maybe they just stopped doing these emails. But the stoppage turns out to be an indication that there's something wrong with your subscription. So here's the hint. Just the additional heads up here from, and I've now forgotten whether we want to be identifying folks, in this case, our tipster, by their real name or by the email identifier that they use. But at any rate, the information is just the same. The heads up here is that you might not know, but as he points out here, I at least always got an email from Patreon after the show was done with a link for listening to the show through the Patreon website. That was always earlier than through Apple Podcasts. Similar information. But that email eventually went away a couple months ago, and while I missed it, I didn't really spend time wondering why. And now, after getting back on board over the weekend, that daily email is back. And there may be others out there who found that for whatever reason their subscription was canceled by Patreon, and the only indication that there would be such a cancellation is the lack of emails, and you might not give it a second thought. But if you think back about it and you say, yeah, I used to get those emails, I don't need them anymore because I know where to go to get the show, and I do that as a matter of habit anyway. But if those emails were once coming to your inbox and now, come to think of it, they are not, you may be among the people who need to go and double check to see whether you are, in fact, still registered as a supporter. And since there was some, 30-something such people, it may pay for all of us to give it a second look and go and review things. So thanks very much for that tip. And I will try and remember every once in a while to also remind you, yes, you should be liking the show, recommending the show, uprating the show, making comments on the show, all the things that you could do algorithmically in order to make it that much more likely that I, too, will get a chance to, gaslight right-wing Twitter into being woke. That's what I intend to do with my newfound power as soon as I find it. And when I do, it'll all be new again. Okay, so, all right, other stories I wanted to give you some background on. Maybe bring up a few new stories that have made it to the radar that will make you look like you know what's going on before anybody else does at some point, perhaps over the weekend. But first, the NBC News report that informed our earlier discussion about the steampunk weirdo that is going to, or that is Trump's nominee for heading up the Bureau of Labor Statistics. By the way, I think if all of this comes down like a ton of bricks and we find ourselves watching Republicans squirm and unable to confirm this guy into the job, and I'm not certain if it's a job that needs Senate confirmation or not, but I guess by reading more about it, we'll find out. I'm wondering whether he's just going to say, I don't know who this guy is. He was handed to me. I have no idea. Somebody gave me his CV, and it was very short, so it was easy to read. So I said, yeah, sure. Why not? Well, let's do a picture in the office and whatever. Oh, now, I don't think being a January 6th guy is going to bother Trump any, but being, that on top of having no qualifications whatsoever and being a bit of a weirdo, and I'm sure, he's going to have a difficult time convincing senators in person that he's someone of importance because of what a weirdo he is. Trump Bureau of Labor Statistics nominee was a, quote, bystander outside Capitol on January 6th, White House says. The White House says EJ, and we're still not sure about how he pronounces his last name. Is it Anthony? Not sorry, Antoni. E.J. Antony was in town for meetings unrelated to Trump's efforts to overturn the 2020 election, just hanging around town in freezing cold January in the middle of the pandemic for meetings, as people were doing when everyone was working remotely. You know how that goes. So, already his story is on shaky ground, and I don't know how many people I haven't seen people critiquing that. But that's why we read the news out loud here on this show. You pick up subtleties that you're supposed to skim past and say, hey, wait a second, is this story real or what? And it's something you should always be doing with anybody, any Trump person making a claim about anything. Honestly, to be in town for meetings in January 6, 2020 for a nobody like this guy with nothing on his CV, I don't think there was anybody that required his presence. And the story of, well, I just saw on the news that something interesting was happening at the Capitol, so I went to find out, what it was like. Well, if you turned on the news and watched on the TV news as Trump was doing, you also saw, well, what's happening here is a lot of fighting and tear gas. Maybe I'll head down to go check it out. I don't think so. Anyway, let's see what this story has to say about it. Ryan Riley is the reporter for NBC News, and we'll see whether this is the article that lays it out, because I saw Empty Wheel Blue Sky posting, whatever we're calling it, about this article and saying that, making the comment that he was somehow photographed exiting from both of the entrances that had been breached. I don't know how you can tell from the photo that he's exiting necessarily. I think he's facing the other direction in the crowd, but that could mean anything. Anyway, let's see. President Donald Trump's pick to run the Bureau of Labor Statistics was among the crowd outside the Capitol on January 6, 2021, with the White House saying he was a, quote, bystander. The White House, I guess, is suggesting that line of thinking, who wandered over after seeing coverage on the news. Trump saw coverage on the news and didn't wander over, but, he wanted to, allegedly, but he couldn't find his way to get that done. He was so powerful that he couldn't get that to happen. And by the way, it's an interesting tack for the White House to be taking here, saying he was a bystander, which I guess is supposed to mean, hey, nothing to see here. He wasn't one of the insurrectionists, who, by the way, aren't insurrectionists, and this was a day of love and they were tourists anyway. Why bother pretending he was a bystander? He's pardoned all the people and told everybody that these are the heroes of the Second American Revolution. Why would you downplay your role in January 6th when it's such a great thing? Oh, I don't know. Because everything's a lie and, whatever. E.J. Antony or whatever his name is, supposedly an economist, but definitely from the Heritage Foundation, nominated by Trump this week after the president fired the previous BLS head, appears in numerous videos posted on social media of the crowd on Capitol grounds. And again, I'll just point out, those videos show thousands upon thousands of people, being heroic and having a day of love, to stand out enough that you're able to pick people out of the crowd like that. If you're looking for, well, what's the weirdo factor on this guy? Like Stephen Miller, like a couple of the other ones, he's got a distinct ghoulish weirdo vampire look, and that's why you can spot him in multiple videos online. The footage shows him approximately an hour after the mob removed police barricades. The footage appears to show him leaving the grounds as people entered the Capitol and not entering the building. Antony is on the west side of the Capitol in one video, archived from the social media website Parler, where all the innocent people archive their stuff, and appears in surveillance footage posted online by the Republican-led Committee on House Administration Subcommittee on Oversight. So, okay. Reached by NBC News on Tuesday, Antony declined to comment. A White House official said Wednesday that Antony was in Washington on January 6th for in-person meetings with his then-employer at an office blocks away from the Capitol, and he did not cross any barricades or participate in any demonstrations, of which they are so proud somehow. The footage does not show Antony crossing barricades or demonstrating, just sort of oddly being there for no apparent reason. And remember, he's been called in for an in-person meeting at the height of the onset of the pandemic, but don't worry about it. It was totally having an in-person meeting. And also, why did you go there? If you had a meeting, shouldn't you be busy somewhere? Well, the meeting was over. Well, shouldn't you be getting to work on the action items for the meeting? I needed to go out and see what was going on. Weren't you so afraid of crime that you shouldn't leave the office? You should immediately get back in your car or on the metro and shuttle yourself to safety? No, because reasons. I wanted to go where all the love and tear gas and police were. Well, at least he's not afraid of crime, so he's got that going for him, I guess, which is nice. Here's one of the photos of him. And by the way, he has, I think, considerably more. Well, I guess he's got hair. He's got a receding hairline in his most recent photo, and it looks like, yeah, maybe it's about the same there. I don't know. I was thinking of him as Stephen Miller and therefore bald, but in fact, whatever. Okay, so there he is milling around in the crowd. The Parler video, which was also archived by ProPublica, by the way, if you wanted to go to a place that wasn't a disgusting cesspool to view it, shows Anthony walking away from the crowd on the west side of the Capitol grounds. Tear gas was in the air, and conservative radio host Alex Jones can be heard speaking over a megaphone. So that's interesting. And this picture, I guess, is a still from that video. And I will point out, by the way, to say he's walking away from the crowd is also, that assumes a bit too much. He's trying to say that he was walking away because he was just a bystander. But, I mean, he is in the throng, and he's facing opposite direction of the majority of the crowd. But there are many other people who are facing the camera, which is behind the crowd as well. And like if you circled somebody who was in the middle of this crowd, I mean, it depends how you frame it, right? I mean, there's plenty of people behind him. He's walking past people who are there in helmets and everything. Most of the people are not wearing helmets, but it's an assumption and an intentional framing to say he's walking away. We don't know whether he's walking away or not, or he's just repositioning himself inside the crowd in order to surge into the Capitol later on. I don't know. That may or may not be a fair accusation, but it's a supposition and conclusory at that to say, well, he was walking away because he was done observing, because of his busy day. Other footage shows Anthony on the east side of the Capitol building walking south away from the building. That's true. South would be away from the building, but we don't really know what he's doing. This is the way he's facing in this particular freeze frame. And by the way, what a busy day. So all those meetings in person, and he had enough time to make his way through the crowd on both sides of the Capitol. Interesting, too. I just wanted to see what was going on. Holy cow, there's tear gas and people fighting cops and huge amounts of people trying to push their way into the Capitol building. I wonder what's happening on the other side. Oh, the same. Well, at least this was a good use of my time. It's a pretty thin story. All right, well, what else we got? Here's, I guess, the quote from the White House. This is Taylor Rogers giving an emailed statement. The pictures show, he says conclusively, E.J. Anthony, a bystander to the events of January 6th, observing and then leaving the Capitol area. That's doing an awful lot of work. E.J. was in town for meetings, and it is wrong and defamatory, interestingly, to suggest that E.J. engaged in anything inappropriate or illegal, even though the White House position is that nothing inappropriate or illegal happened there, and anybody who was accused of a crime as a result should be pardoned anyway because of how awesome and appropriate all of the activity was there. Not the stuff he was observing, because he wasn't involved in that. He was there to observe and remark upon the inappropriateness of it all. Even though it was, did you say you got charged? I was saying it was totally appropriate. That's what I meant. Yeah. So, a little bit of cake having and cake eating as well. The Justice Department's investigation into the January 6th attack was the largest in history, with prosecutors scouring video evidence to identify and charge participants, but to no avail until in the end. The department mostly focused on charging individuals who entered the Capitol building or engaged in aggravating behavior outside. But let me tell you something. Take a look at this guy. I promise you, any behavior he was involved in was aggravating for anyone who was in within a 50-foot radius. I can promise you. And there are a lot of people in his 50-foot radius. Anyway, on his first day in office, Trump ended the investigation into the January 6th attack, pardoned all of the roughly 1,500 Capitol defendants, and commuted the sentences of others. Trump fired former BLS head Erica what was her name? McIntarfer, maybe? I don't know. This is a difficult name to work out. And by the way, it must be very difficult. I imagine growing up with that name, McIntarfer. It doesn't take a great deal of creativity to rearrange that into something that young kids will use to bother one another with. Anyway, she was fired earlier this month, suggesting without evidence that she had Trump suggested without evidence that she had rigged jobs reports for political purposes. The president then said he would nominate Antony, a frequent guest on Steve Bannon's War Room, who has long criticized the BLS. And of course, that whole Yes, Prime Minister piece shows that most such civil servants will go as far as possible out of their way to avoid doing something that will get them fired. If anything, those labor statistics were probably better than they deserved to be in the hopes that she wouldn't get fired. Anyway, Antony said in an interview with Fox News on August 4th, before his nomination, that the agency should suspend issuing the monthly job report, instead publishing quarterly data until the reports are more accurate. Interesting. So that made him obviously a pliable choice for Donald Trump, right? Everything else needs to be done immediately, and we want to do short term, except this one, which makes us look bad. So in the short term, we don't want to hear about it. Make it a more long-term report. Anyway, Antony will need to be confirmed by the Senate to take over the BLS. That's, I guess, there's the answer for how it's supposed to work. But of course, as we've learned, there are many people who are supposed to be confirmed by the Senate who aren't or can't be, but who nonetheless head up their divisions anyway, either under the acting title or interim or acting, or we just don't care what the Constitution says or what have you. So we'll see whether he makes it past the Senate or whether he circumvents the Senate, at least temporarily, for Trump's purposes later on. While Republicans control the chamber, that is the Senate, January 6th has caused issues for Trump nominees in the past. Although, it's worth pointing out, although he pardoned everybody, what did they do? As they say, while Republicans control the chamber, January 6th caused a problem. That was because January 6th broke into the chamber and took control of it illegally, and senators are sometimes angry when they find out that this is one of the people who chased me out the door. Trump withdrew the nomination, for instance, of Ed Martin to take over the U.S. Attorney's Office for the District of Columbia after Senator Tom Tillis indicated that Martin's past support for January 6 participants would be a deal breaker. And you know what happened to Ed Martin. He had to slink off into the sunset in shame. Oh, no, I'm sorry. He landed a job as the pardon attorney for the White House, in charge of deciding who would be pardoned for their activities, for instance, let's say on January 6th, if they haven't already had their cases taken care of. So a lot of intertwined nonsense in this story. And I wanted to read that, one, to establish where the claim that he was at January 6th was coming from, and two, to demonstrate to you, by the way, I think that's a pretty thin story. And three, that even Ryan Riley, who, does a pretty good job very often, ordinarily, I think, for NBC, and may have had his doubts, but they may not have been interested in printing his doubts. But yeah, the White House just says, oh, well, here, he's facing another direction in this picture. Now, there could be plenty of pictures with him facing the Capitol as though he were entering, but then we would just be seeing the back of his head and we wouldn't know it was him. But okay, this guy turned around for the camera, as did thousands of other people, and now we're saying, oh yeah, he was leaving. He was totally in the middle of this throng with tear gas in the air and everything because he was in between meetings on a freezing cold day in the middle of a pandemic. He put himself in the middle of the crowd. Okay, sure, whatever, man. I just don't think so. All right, I got another couple of things to share with you, and some of them, I guess, have, well, this is an update we got to add, and we're running out of time even in this segment, but just to keep you up to date on some of the happenings in court. It's too bad Armando isn't here. Armando can drive over and tell us what's going on with this one. He's been on this standing beat on a standing basis for quite some time. There's a new court decision from one of the appeals courts. Trump administration can, it turns out, withhold billions in aid, an appeals court rules. In a 2-1 vote, a federal appeals court panel ruled that foreign aid groups that sued to recover funds that President Trump froze in violation of the Impoundment Act cannot challenge the decision. This is a standing decision, essentially. And they said, Congress controls the purse strings. Yeah, the Impoundment Act prevents the president from doing this. But you people who are complaining about it, you're not allowed to complain about it. You lack standing to bring such a case. All you are is the direct beneficiary of this federal spending. Who's supposed to bring the case? Well, it's supposed to be either the General Services Administration, I guess, or perhaps I guess that's it, really. And they are, of course, an arm of the legislative branch, which is dominated by Trump's MAGA Republicans, and they're just not interested in bringing the case, it turns out. Zach Montag did the reporting on this one, and I got to play the break music and get the hell out of here for 2 minutes, but we'll bring you the news. I just wanted to just remind you that Armando has been telling you for years now that federal courts love to lean on standing as a technicality to get out from under making uncomfortable decisions. And we are at the point in this country where you have to wonder whether there are judges out there who are just afraid to rule against Trump and are now concocting standing rulings to avoid it. Hi, everybody. It's me, David. Let's change things up from the old fundraising pitch for just a minute and talk instead about how you can be a part of our show. If you've got a smartphone or any other electronic recording device, why not sit down and record a segment for us? Read us an important article and give us your take. Read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Then send the file to me at kagrox@gmail.com, and I'll try and work it into the show. Short segments, a few minutes in length, are easiest to fit in. And of course, I can't always guarantee that I'll be able to play everything, but if you've ever shouted at your radio or TV about something you wish was being covered, here's your chance to change that. Make the show your own. Send your submissions to me at kagrox@gmail.com. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. So let me review the New York Times rundown on what happened here from Zach Montag in Montague. I'm sorry, Montag. No, probably Montague. Sorry, Zach. But what happened in the appeals court here, a federal appeals court? We got to figure out which one it is. Probably D.C., you would think, but just based on where the suit was probably filed. A federal appeals court panel cleared the way on Wednesday for the Trump administration to continue refusing to spend billions of dollars in foreign aid, finding that aid organizations that had sued to recover the money lacked the legal right to bring the challenge. The decision, which centered on President Trump's authority to withhold funding already appropriated by Congress, timeout, the decision centered on the right to bring the legal challenge. The case was supposed to be centered on the president's authority to withhold funding already appropriated by Congress. That's still a serious question. This doesn't settle the question, but it does, in fact, delay things for long enough that the effect remains, the decision remains in effect. The money will still not show up. This just gets in the way of deciding whether that's right or not by focusing on the technicality of who's asking the question. So it's, I think, a mistake to say that the decision centered on Trump's authority. It did not. That's what you just told us in the first paragraph. Again, you got to do some more critical reading, I think. I know I may be nitpicking, and Zach might say, yeah, I got that. But I just, on the fly, I said it that way. Yeah, well, there's editors. And if they won't do it, I will. All right. So the decision, which did not center, I would say, on President Trump's authority to withhold funding appropriated by Congress, handed the White House a significant legal victory, and I would add the word nonetheless. Since taking office, Mr. Trump and his advisors have consistently claimed expansive authority to freeze federal dollars allocated for projects that they have endeavored to snuff out, an action known as impoundment that legal scholars and aid groups had considered to be strictly limited under federal law, because it was, and arguably still is. It's just that the court found another reason not to enforce this thing that is still strictly limited under federal law. So anyway, by a 2-1 vote, a panel of, you guessed it, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the D.C. Circuit ruled that under the Impoundment Control Act of 1974, only the Government Accountability Office, not the General Services Administration, but the GAO, which serves as Congress's independent watchdog, could challenge the president's efforts to withhold foreign aid funding. The GSA was just, I got confused by the G. But no, it's not at all the General Services Administration. And GSA, therefore, I think I would have misstated it if I think I said a few minutes ago, an arm of Congress. It is, in fact, the other G organization, the GAO, that is an arm of Congress, not GSA. But so that's an interesting way of putting it, right? Only the General Accounting Office, General Accountability Office, they call it now. It used to be General Accounting Office, has standing to do that, which is odd, to say the least. And I guess it makes a certain amount of sense, right? The prerogative to make the appropriations, to control the purse strings, belongs to Congress. And if the GAO belongs to Congress, then the GAO can sue on its behalf. No word on whether individual members of Congress can sue, although given the standing decisions that the courts have made in the past, probably no. But perhaps the one or another of the houses as a whole, if the entirety of the body were to agree to become the plaintiff, maybe that would work. I don't know. Anyway, they're saying GAO certainly could. And the panel found that groups that receive government funding, in this instance a number of global health nonprofits, do not have cause to challenge Mr. Trump's funding cuts. And that's very tenuous, by the way. And I would like to read through the ruling, and I'm sure that there will be legal analysts, and we'll hear from Steve Vladeck at some point, who basically, you have to make this decision. The question is, if Congress, and if an act of Congress says you should be getting an award of whatever, however you want to term it. You're due $1 million for your program. And it is enacted by law and signed by the president and everything, and the money is supposed to show up, but you don't get the money. Why don't you have standing to sue? And the answer is, I don't know, some sort of weirdo technicality that I'd have to read the opinion to get to. But I think most people would understand the concept of standing to include the people who were supposed to be on the receiving end of this, essentially this contract that says you're going to get $1 million from the federal government. The only person who can sue in order to overturn this claim of impoundment power is the government that you're contracting with. They're not going to, that's not a very good protection for your contractual rights, is it? To allow only the other side of the equation to bring the suit against themselves? That seems unlikely to happen. And I guess they're depending on tensions between the branches that I guess, and they can point here. I mean, I guess it sounds pretty good. We can point to the founders. The Federalist Papers say that the competing branches, the co-equal branches, will be able to settle these things and will have motivation to do so as independent actors. But, we're all watching what happens as the mischiefs of faction. Another thing that the founders actually pointed out, that partisan political control by a single party in this case makes it, let's say, less likely that the individual prerogatives of the branches will be adequately and zealously represented before the courts on this one. And throw in that the president is possibly threatening the lives of the judges making the decision. Well, it's not likely to come out very well in terms of the balancing of the equities. So, where were we? This decision by the appeals court lifted a lower court's order that had required the administration to continue processing foreign aid payments with funds Congress had budgeted. That is to say, the first courts that touched this question had to address the question of standing. The DOJ almost certainly raised the question of standing with the trial court, and the trial court said, what do you mean standing? There was a contract to award $1 million to somebody, and you didn't give them the money. Yeah, they have standing. Of course they do. It's common sense. Oh yeah, well, we're going to appeal to the appeals court and try to convince them that only the government has standing to sue itself on this, and we think we can win. And then they did. I don't know whether that will be subject to appeal en banc and sit the whole D.C. Circuit Court and find out whether, as a whole, they agree or not. But I hope so, although then if they do that, then they'll just hand it over to the Supreme Court, which will decide, oh, no, back again. A, B. It goes back to no standing, sorry. In finding that the Trump administration had unlawfully delayed money Congress appropriated, that trial court previously required the government to make available all the foreign assistance funds Congress allocated for fiscal year 2024. They wrote a budget, they adopted it, they passed appropriations bills saying this money should be awarded. The president signed them. It became law. The lower court thought, well, act of Congress, law, we think that should stick. But not the appeals court. So anyway, that apparently included nearly $4 billion to spend on global health activities until September and more than $6 billion for HIV/AIDS programs through 2028. The decision on Wednesday noted that the administration had paid out substantially all the amounts owed on existing contracts as required by the lower court ruling, so at least they looked at it that way. That's something. Barring further action from the courts, the ruling gave the Trump administration leeway to slash the funds, cut the agencies that administer foreign assistance programs, and terminate entire aid programs that Congress had funded. Again, though, sort of. You have to do a little bit of legal parsing here and realize what they're saying is this plaintiff can't bring the case. Somebody else could. But because we're not required to decide it at this point, we won't tell you whether, if the right plaintiff had come before us, whether we would have allowed the president to do this or not. They really didn't decide on impoundment powers. It just has the practical effect of allowing the impoundment to continue because the wrong plaintiff, quote unquote wrong plaintiff, showed up here. And they could really do you a favor by explaining that 2 or 3 times in the course of this article. They didn't, so I will. On numerous occasions this year, the Government Accountability Office has found that the Trump administration illegally impounded funds authorized by Congress, including money meant for public infrastructure and early child education. By June, the legislative watchdog had also had more than 40 additional investigations underway, with some of the impoundment inquiries focused on the government's handling of foreign aid, the subject of this case, according to documents previously viewed by the Times. So it's not necessarily the case that the GAO won't complain about these things. They might, and in fact, in some cases they have. I don't know whether they've been to court over it, but now they're going to have to, I guess, go to court over it if they want to reverse the situation on foreign aid. Under the law, the Accountability Office has the power to sue to force the release of impounded funds, but it has not done so thus far. Curiously enough, they've investigated it, but they haven't sued. Why haven't they sued? They sue or don't sue at the direction of congressional leadership, and that belongs to Republicans at the moment. So it hasn't done so thus far, letting lawsuits launched by outside groups play out. And this one isn't done playing out, so they'll be sitting on their hands for a while longer. The agency's leader, Comptroller General Gene Dodaro, previously described a legal challenge as a last resort. Alicia Dunn-Georgiou, the president of the Global Health Council, one of the groups involved in the lawsuit, said the organization would continue to fight to make the funding available again, because it's killing people when it's not available. While today's decision is very disappointing, Global Health Council will continue our efforts to protect the global health sector and the critical work being done around the world, she said in a statement. Wednesday's ruling was the latest in a series of decisions by appeals courts that have in recent weeks overturned efforts by lower court judges to curb sweeping actions by Mr. Trump. On his first day in office, Trump announced a review of the country's foreign aid policies. Not really, just canceling them. That's the review. At the same time, he froze foreign development assistance and humanitarian aid, while top aides, including Secretary of State Marco Rubio, began dismantling the United States Agency for International Development, the main U.S. aid agency, and carried out a campaign to end funding for global projects. Days later, the Trump administration also placed a moratorium on new funding for projects administered by the State Department or USAID. both agencies, followed by suspending or terminating thousands of grants and denying invoices. Are we not even going to mention Elon Musk and Dodgy in this somehow? That's amazing. A number of foreign aid nonprofits that had for years depended on federal funding filed lawsuits early this year, arguing that President Trump had overstepped his authority and usurped Congress's power over spending. Lower court judges in several cases agreed, finding that in unilaterally shutting down various funding streams, how did that happen? The Trump administration violated the separation of powers between Congress and the executive branch. In March, Judge Amir H. Ali of the Federal District Court for the District of Columbia blocked the cuts involving foreign aid and ordered the Trump administration to keep paying out funds Congress had set aside. Judge Karen L. Henderson, an appointee of President George H.W. Bush, who wrote Wednesday's majority opinion, said the federal law lays out a clear process for challenging impoundment, requiring the head of the GAO to sue on Congress's behalf. Well, what they mean is requiring that any valid suit, I guess now they're saying, would have to be filed by the GAO. Whether or not they're obligated to file that suit is another question, I think. She wrote that grant recipients who had brought the early suits in February could not, therefore, rely on the claim that Mr. Trump had exceeded his authority. Lawsuits challenging the president, she wrote, cannot be recast as constitutional claims through the mere invocation of the separation of powers. Why not? Just 'cause. Judge Gregory G. Katsas, a Trump appointee, voted along with Judge Henderson. In a dissenting opinion, Judge Florence Y. Pan, who was appointed by President Joe Biden, wrote that courts can and should still scrutinize instances in which a president appeared to have unlawfully overridden Congress. You'd think they might be interested in such a thing. She said that applied even though Congress had tasked the head of the GAO with bringing claims under the Impoundment Act. The court's holding that the grantees have no constitutional cause of action is as startling as it is erroneous. She wrote, the majority holds that when the president refuses to spend funds appropriated by Congress based on policy disagreements, that's merely a statutory violation and raises no constitutional alarm bells. Well, I disagree as well. So you'd find me in dissent, and 2-1 is not an overwhelming number. Of course, there's only 3 people on those panels. We'll see whether they take this thing to the full appeals court or not. But yeah, just to keep you up to date on a long-running sore spot for Armando in his coverage of what's going on in the courts, But once again, they had an outcome that they wanted, and they engineered their way to get to it. So there you go. All right. Let's see. Other things that I thought I might share with you. This is a longer read and might make for a Good Friday thing. But I don't know. On the subject of federal spending and Republican reaction to federal spending and our ongoing discussions about what do Democrats need to do to stay competitive and how can they appeal to people. And I don't know. It seems like an interesting outgrowth. This is actually an opinion piece, a guest essay in the New York Times from this is interesting. I had thought, a guest essay? Is he now semi-retired? Tom Edsall, longtime columnist, who I had thought sort of had a permanent, anchor at the New York Times, but maybe he's only writing on a more, on sort of a part-time basis at this point. But at any rate, I was just interested to see it as guest essay versus just opinion. Anyway, what's the story he's covering here? An interesting angle. Democrats delivered millions to Texarkana. It didn't matter one bit. This came along with a blue sky comment, and I don't know whether it was Edsall who put it up or somebody else, but just pointing it out like the criticism is usually, hey, I don't vote for Democrats in rural areas because they don't deliver for us here in the rural areas. And it doesn't matter. As it turns out, when they do deliver, because remember, very often technocratic leaning Democrats are very frequently, taking on the challenge of, well, we have this problem in rural America. And even though rural America increasingly red, whether we are speaking as Democrats who happen to represent rural areas or not, look, we see a problem, and the folks in rural areas are disadvantaged in this way, and we're going to try to address it. Which would otherwise be DEI, of course, but you're white people, so that doesn't count. It's just sort of rural development, economic development for you. Whereas if you were black, it would be DEI and therefore illegals. You get the picture. Anyway, the point here is that it turns out that there's less to the claim that Democrats are unpopular in rural areas because they don't deliver for rural areas than you might think. It is, in fact, a totally different kind of bias against Democrats, and probably one driven by culture war more than anything else. Well, here's how Edsel puts it. Few communities in America prospered as much as Texarkana during President Joe Biden's 4 years in the White House. And few communities were more ungrateful than the voters of that region, which is anchored around twin cities spread across the Texas-Arkansas border. Now, if you were ungrateful for your assistance, that's the sort of thing that President Trump would say, well, then to hell with them. They're not, you didn't even appreciate it. You didn't even say thank you. But Democrats tend to be technocrats and say, well, whether they were appreciative of it or not, they needed it, and we do things that are necessary and helpful to the country as a whole. But I guess people don't want you to, for some strange reason. In 2024, Edsel continues, in spite of economic growth under a Democratic president at rates unheard of in decades, residents of Texarkana turned around and cast a higher percentage of their ballots for Donald Trump than ever before. Texarkana serves as a case study in the uphill struggle of the Democratic Party to win and win back working class support. When the Biden administration's Inflation Reduction Act of 2022 selected Texarkana as an, quote, energy community, the region became eligible for the Energy Community Tax Credit Bonus. Renewable energy projects in the area have seen such a significant boom that Texarkana College now offers dedicated courses in solar panel installation. Zakai Lee, a PhD candidate at the University of Chicago, writes in a paper that was published last month. The paper called Unrequited Love, estimating the electoral effect of a place-based green subsidy with a 2D regression discontinuity design. Blah, 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 blah. Yeah, well, what does it mean? I think unrequited love probably sums it up, and so does the headline here. But that's academic speak for. We also have charts to demonstrate that this is true. The selection of Texarkana laid the groundwork for the announcement in March of 2023 by the Texamerica's Center, owner and operator of a 12,000-acre Texarkana industrial park, that it planned to dedicate 400 acres for the development of green energy data centers. Oh boy, that's good. Suitable for major companies looking to expand and enhance data storage capabilities. These things suck up so much power. What a great idea. Green energy to power them. Okay, that could make Texarkana like a leading center of cutting-edge technology that people usually pay lots and lots of money for and employ lots and lots of people in building. Sounds pretty good, right? No, we hate it somehow. That was followed by the U.S. Department of Energy's announcement in September of 2024 of a $225 million award to TerraVolta Resources, LLC, to support the creation of a more than $1 billion lithium production facility in the Texarkana region. The Biden-backed bipartisan infrastructure law provided the funds to begin construction of the facility that officials estimate will have a production capacity of at least 25,000 tons of lithium carbonate annually, sufficient for about 500,000 electric vehicles per year, in support of domestic production of advanced batteries and battery materials nationwide. We want to compete with the Chinese for that. We want to bring jobs to these depressed areas. Okay, fine, here, let's do it. No, not like that. We want to pay people $50,000 to join ICE and beat brown people over the head with truncheons, not build infrastructure. Infrastructure sucks. It drives whales loco from inside Texarkana. The steady greening of the Texarkana economy during the Biden administration was accompanied by positive economic trends in the region. What do you know? During the 4 years from January 2021 to January 2025, the years of the Biden presidency, by the way, the unemployment rate in the Texarkana metropolitan area fell to 4.2% from 6.8%, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. I suppose they were rigging it, right? Well, you can't have that. And of course, those things fell from 4.2% to 6.8%. And what do we say about that?
Boring.
Right, I know, right. It's statistics. It's technocratic gobbledygook. But whatever, people got jobs. They know about that. The metro region's gross domestic product had experienced sluggish growth from 2010 through 2020, and there are some figures attached to that. After Biden took office, however, the region's GDP shot up, reaching $7.2 billion in 2023 from a level of about $5 billion in that decade previously named. However, nobody cared, essentially. The most recent figure available, by the way, at the Federal Reserve is that $7.2 billion figure. If Democrats thought all these favorable developments would pay off on Election Day, they were grievously disappointed. And that's because mostly if you walk around Texarkana and saying, well, in 2010, your GDP was $5.04 billion, whereas now it's $7.2 billion, people say, I don't have $1 billion. I don't know what you're talking about. On August 8th of this year, John Sides, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, it's spelled that way, a political scientist at Vanderbilt, wrote on the blog Good Authority that, quote, throughout Joe Biden's presidency, there was a notion that a politician can win votes by delivering benefits to voters, also known as deliverism, which I've never actually heard, but I'm not a political scientist. But by the way, ground-shaking political theory. You can win votes by delivering benefits to voters. And it wasn't that it was throughout Biden's presidency. It's throughout American history. I mean, basically. But whatever. In practice, though, the Biden administration's deliverism strategy failed to deliver politically, both across the nation and especially and emblematically in Texarkana. There's another component, by the way, to electoral politics and communication is it. In 2020, Texarkana, which is made up of Miller County, Arkansas, and Bowie County, Texas, voted overwhelmingly for Donald Trump. 72.3% to 27.7% for Biden. And I guess this is maybe where you could probably round off and you don't need the points and you start to see people glaze over. And this is how you lose in places like this. But there you go. So 72 to 28 for Trump, a 44.6 point margin. In 2024, despite the growth of the green industry and economic improvements during the Biden years, Trump beat Kamala Harris in the Texarkana counties with 75.4% of the vote to 24.6% for Harris, an immense 50.8 point margin. These voting patterns show how durable Trump's core support is, despite his limitations and his falling poll numbers. Trump's striking staying power among a substantial minority of voters raises the possibility that if Trump can pull off his party's redistricting or re-redistricting campaigns in Florida, Texas, Indiana, and Ohio, and secure a Republican House victory in 2026, he may be able to continue to tear apart the nation's democratic fabric, smashing due process, ethical norms, free speech, academic autonomy, the safety net, and whatever he turns his attention to next. I asked a range of experts on democracy and its discontents to explore how and why America has reached this point. Their views vary widely, but their comments suggest that the forces driving this discontent include the confluence of economic stagnation in rural and ex-urban America, but apparently no one cares if you try to cure that. The volatile interaction of racial hostility and opposition to immigration, which is usually actually not a huge problem in Texarkana, but okay. The failure of the left to fill certain community and spiritual needs, And the growing elite, there's more, growing elitism of the Democratic Party and Trump's continuing ability to tap and direct the accumulating resentments of white and minority Americans. But as you know, he's fighting for the everyman by gluing gold bricks to the walls of the Oval Office in the White House. It's really amazing. Has a deep commitment to democratic values and procedures become what amounts to a so-called luxury belief held by relatively comfortable, well-educated elites, while devalued or less prioritized by those in the bottom half of the income distribution? I mean, what a way to isolate yourself from, the everyman voter by just putting it question that way. But it's the New York Times. Has a large segment of the population become deaf to democratic appeals and reflectively dismissive of liberal proposals and policy initiatives? Has that same segment of the population become so deeply enamored of Trump that it will prove permanently blind to his flaws? Well, all of those, I'm sure, have part of the explanation wrapped up in them. He begins with Susan Stokes, a political scientist at the University of Chicago, again, and director of the Chicago Center on Democracy. She wrote by email that inequality is... You want to know what it really means to me to read you this quote? Okay. Well, you should read through it. It's a very interesting academic exercise, but I remind you it is a pretty academic exercise. And it takes communicators, perhaps like, Zoran Mamdani, AOC maybe, others that might perhaps have a better connection to Texarkana personally, perhaps, if we could find such a person, to cut through and clarify for people what it really means to have economic development brought to the region and how you can come to understand it without ever saying the word point anything. No numbers, please.
From networksradio.com. You have been listening to Kagro in the morning with David Waldman.
All right. Well, see, that's altogether too dismissive and elitist, you might say. Well, look. They have to address the problem, and you have to describe it correctly in order to address it. And speaking of addressing things correctly, Justice Putnam in the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy coming up next right here on Netroots Radio. He'll be taking care of accurate descriptions of the news of the day. We'll see you tomorrow.